to a special episode of Beyond the Forecast. On this episode, we're going to be talking with Major General Charles Bolden, who is former NASA administrator of NASA. He was with NASA from 2009 to 2017, and also before that, he spent a lot of time with NASA as an astronaut on board 4 space shuttle missions and more with his entire career. It's fascinating. So what we're going to do here, we're going to start this episode with a look back at my conversation with him, and then we're going to talk more about our hurricane season that we've had for 2025. So, we have a lot to discuss about your time with NASA, about your time flying with the shuttle, but we're going to start with your time as NASA administrator. So
okay.
During your time as NASA administrator, there was a lot of things that changed over that time and the decisions that you made to get to where we are now with the space industry.
Yeah.
What are some of those things? Give us kind of a look back.
Well,
at
the
that.
most dramatic change was one that was decided before I became the NASA administrator, and that was, a decision that was made by President Obama that we were going to finally comply with the direction that was given in the Bush administration to retire the shuttle and move to what we call commercial space, where we would do a government-private partnership in producing spacecraft. So that was big change number one. The other thing that surprised me that I wasn't aware was in the offing was we were going to sort of abandon our lunar program, which was the vehicles for it anyway, which was the Constellation program. That was like if you hear about Artemis today. So
yes.
and this is reminiscent of the days of Constellation, when the Obama administration decided that they were going to cancel the Constellation vehicles, but still get to the moon in the time frame that they had originally predicted. So that became a super challenge. So putting the shuttle on the ground, getting rid of the Constellation program, and trying to find a replacement. Although it's too involved to talk about, because there were all kinds of pressures from inside the administration and outside the administration and everything, where ideologues had ideas about NASA getting out of human spaceflight entirely. So those were some of the things that I dealt with when I became the NASA administrator.
Tough
nobody was thinking about my favorite, which was aeronautics, airplanes.
Yep.
Yeah. So we did a lot of work in aeronautics that are very relevant to this area, because right over in Langley, the Langley Research Center that's actually the mother center. So that was where NASA started. When we went from the old NACA to NASA, Langley became the mother center.
And then all the facilities that they have there for
yes,
aviation.
everything, exactly.
Yeah. During your time in space, when you're on board, all right, we're going back in time a little bit.
Yeah.
During your time in space on board the shuttle, what's one of your favorite memories?
Boy, that's my favorite memories are not about space, to be quite honest.
Okay.
I was asked. I was at Norfolk Academy earlier this afternoon, and one of the students asked me what was my favorite flight of my 4, and I said I don't have a favorite. They were all different and all incredible, but I have one that I cherish the most because of the experience that I had prior to the flight and then during the flight, but most importantly after, and that was my last mission, because I knew it was going to be my last, for one thing. So every evolution was the last time I was going to do that. I'm a very emotional person, and so as I walked away from that particular training session, I kind of went off in private and cried somewhere, because I knew I was never going to do that again.
Yeah, because it's an incredible opportunity.
It was also the first joint Russian-American mission where we flew a Russian cosmonaut as a crew member with us. And so I had gone from not wanting to fly with any damn Russian, as I explained to the NASA administrator, to saying, yeah, I'll be the commander for the first joint Russian-American mission. And I was completely changed from the experience of having, one, met the 2 guys who were going to train with us, and then one be selected to be the prime, Sergei Krikalev, but then going through training with him, learning from him, because he was an incredibly experienced cosmonaut. He had only flown once, but he had had more experience in his 1 10-month flight than I had had in my previous 3 of just days. And then it was bringing Russian trainers, medical personnel, flight directors, everybody over from Moscow, and having them live and work with us in Houston with their families. So they moved from Moscow to Houston, Texas, which was probably quite a cultural change for them for a lot of different reasons. And we were trying to determine whether we could work cooperatively with them in space, in space stations and stuff like that. Turned out to be an incredibly successful flight, and we went on and flew 6 Americans to the Russian space station Mir, and then together we built the International Space Station.
Yeah, which is still
which is
over today.
Yeah, still chugging.
Yeah, still chugging along.
Yeah.
So part of your talk today and tonight is to look ahead to the future of human space
A little bit.
exploration.
A little bit.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you. Well, I have thoughts, but where we're going for sure, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, because where this administration is, they're up and down and everything. And I was in a session yesterday on the U.S. space program and our battle right now, as some people like to put it, with China. The big difference is China is they're on a trajectory that was set 50 years ago. They have a plan, and they fund the plan. We have sort of a plan, and we don't fund the plan. So I wonder, whether we probably won't beat this is not a news flash to anybody around the space program. We probably will not get back to the moon before the Chinese get there the first time, because they have set 2030 as their definitive time to get there, and they'll probably do that because they generally make their schedules. We say we're going to get there, and somebody says we're going to get to Mars next year, which is absolutely absurd. We got to get back to the moon first.
Yes.
And we'll get there, but it probably won't be before the Chinese get there. And that's really okay, because I believe that kind of exploration is something that should be international, collaborative, and everything. It's going to involve academia, industry, governments, and governments from all over the world. We've grown away from doing things that are NASA only or US only. Almost everything we do, whether it's in science, aeronautics, human space flight, you name it, it's all international. It's international collaboration.
The amount of traffic that's at Kennedy Space Center and
unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you see big changes for Wallops and our spaceport here in Virginia?
I hope Senator Mikulski, the former Senator Mikulski, is not watching up in Maryland, but that's her. She loves Wallops and cared for it dearly, although it didn't belong to her, but she used to think it did because it's in Virginia, but she took care of it. There is so much potential for what we should be doing at Wallops. A lot of what's done at Wallops has to do with science. And again, unfortunately, this administration is really downplaying science, trying to carve a lot of science out of NASA's budget. Sounding rockets, balloons, those kinds of things that are really a focus of Wallops, are not in their plans for the future. So you have to wonder where Wallops is going to go. Wallops is not a human spaceflight launch facility. It's a science launch facility, and so you would hate to see Wallops not be utilized up to its full potential, but that remains to be seen. It's a hard time to be doing an interview about the future of NASA when NASA doesn't have an administrator. As an example, Jared Isaacman has been nominated for the second time by the president to be the NASA administrator, and I think Jared will be exceptional as the NASA administrator if he's ever confirmed by the Senate. But there's so much going on right now. We finally got Congress to come back to town, so maybe they'll come back in and have a hearing and confirm a NASA administrator. Because an agency like NASA with a part-time or an acting administrator, it's really difficult for them to do their job.
It is difficult.
Yeah.
One question I have before I want to make sure I get in before we run out of time. Every time I've talked to an astronaut, which you are.
You haven't even mentioned the Marine Corps. I spent 34 years in the Marine Corps and 20 years in NASA, and we just celebrated our 250th birthday. We're with the Army. We're the oldest service in the nation.
The question I have to ask that I've asked every astronaut though is when.
Semper Fi to all the Marines who are watching, by the way. Happy birthday.
Yes. When you were looking down at Earth or looking deep into space, what surprised you, or do you remember the most?
I remember the most the fact that we are insignificant. This is not a scientific discovery or anything of scientific significance. it's the one thing that I was not prepared for when I went to space. I was incredibly technically prepared. I don't think, even when things went wrong, we had that happen in the simulator. So we were totally prepared technically for everything that could happen. There is no training in emotion. And the human experience of looking at this planet from the vantage point of space, and it is absolutely unbelievable, the planet on which we live. I literally cried on my first mission. About 15, 20 minutes into the flight, we were, coming down over Europe, and I could see this big island out in front of me. And I later realized that wasn't an island at all. That was the continent of Africa, the second largest continent on the planet. And it was my home, the place from which my ancestors had come. I had done all kinds of preparation I'd studied African geography so that I would know all the different nations, and I'd be able to say, okay, my parents could have come from, or my ancestors could have come from Senegal or Nigeria or whatever. Don't know why I expected to see these lines down there. They weren't.
They're not there.
And the continent was incredibly beautiful, from the Mediterranean all the way down to the tip of Africa. And you're just blown away by God's creation, by what he did, and he or she. And so that was the thing that I would say still stands out today as being the most vivid. And it is actually a photo that we took with the IMAX camera that was in the payload bay of the space shuttle. We deployed the Hubble Space Telescope. And after we had deployed Hubble, we did a maneuver that was a 360-degree, essentially a backflip with the shuttle with the IMAX camera running, so we could show what it looked like to go from flying around Earth to looking up at space to upside down flying around Earth to looking right down at Earth. And we captured one of the frames in this about a 2 to 3 minute segment. Was this beautiful picture of the Middle East with Northeast Africa, Western Saudi Arabia, the Mediterranean, Israel and Jordan kind of under the clouds, and you realize that's perhaps the most violent part of this planet. And yet from space it looks so peaceful and serene and beautiful. And it caused me to wonder, why is it that we don't live the way it looks? So that was it remains to this day after 4 flights. The thing that is indelibly imprinted in my brain.
That's a great answer. Yeah. That's what I love to hear.
Thank you.
One lightning round question, then we'll be all done. Your favorite zero-G indicator?
Oh shucks, goldfish. Goldfish. We do a lot of playing with goldfish when we're on orbit. We have them in a Ziploc bag, turn them loose, and then we kind of float around and try to eat them up. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Enjoy your
Thanks
talk
very
tonight.
much. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome back to the special edition episode of Beyond the Forecast. And so far throughout the hurricane season, we have seen a good amount of storms that have popped up in the Atlantic, but not so many into our area. We've been okay.
Yeah, the whole Atlantic, or the Atlantic United States, I should say, coastline, pretty lucky this season. Well, I did some digging, and it was actually the first season since 2015 where we didn't have a landfalling hurricane hit the United States.
Right.
So that is something to take away from this season.
Anywhere in the United States, not even Puerto Rico.
Anywhere, yeah.
Yeah. The Gulf stayed pretty quiet, but there were a lot of named storms, though, on this list.
Yes, the forecast from the beginning of the season and even the midway point of the season when they kind of adjusted their numbers, it held pretty true with the named storms. We knew it would kind of be this kind of closer to normal, but there's a better chance of it being maybe slightly below than previous seasons. Of course, comparing it back to 2020, 21, and 22. But in the times where we got hurricanes, this was a season for major hurricanes.
I was just counting them on the graphic.
Yeah, anything that developed into that Category 1 threshold was, as we could see, able to go higher than that.
Yeah.
If it was able to reach that. So we had that with Aaron, of course, no direct impacts to, for our area. Indirect impacts being, the surge with the coastline being battered by the surf. And just that onshore wind, which was really persistent. The Outer Banks had to deal with, a lot of those problems. Buxton, just an absolutely devastating situation this season in some of those areas along NC-12 where they've lost. How many homes are we down to now?
I think a good dozen, maybe
Over,
15 homes.
I think it has to be over a
thinking
dozen.
I think it was 15 homes last
Yeah.
time
And
I checked.
think about how crazy it is that none of that was produced by a directly landfalling system. You would expect something like that to happen. I always think back to Sandy growing up. The coastline of New Jersey was forever changed by that storm. There are houses that were completely lost forever after that storm. But with this season, it hasn't even taken that. It's just the, northeasterly winds with these systems passing right offshore and just eating up the beaches over time. A lot of recurving storms this season.
Yeah. And this was in the Buxton area, they had a dune. They had a pretty good, not a huge dune, not a high dune, but a dune.
But there was one there. There was an established dune.
And really a pretty long distance between the water and where those homes were. And it just eventually arrived there.
Yeah, that's the key word there. There was a dune.
Yeah.
And just over time.
And you wonder about the lighthouse, too. I haven't checked specifically as to how the elevation is there about the lighthouse. The lighthouses had to have been moved, obviously, historically moved.
The original location is in the water now.
Yeah.
It would have been gone if they didn't
yeah.
move it. And now, did they move it enough? Is it protected?
Yeah.
And how long will it be protected too? Because that dune is moving a lot faster than we originally kind of thought. So we're going to take a look more at some of the stats for this hurricane season. We're going to take a quick break here on the special edition episode of Beyond the Forecast. We'll be right back. Season for 2025, we can look at the storm tracks that we have. And thanks, Brian, for putting this together earlier today. We can see the storms that we've seen.
Remember Chantal?
And Chantal.
That was the one that came really, I guess, if you want to talk about direct landfalling systems. Now, that wasn't a hurricane. It's important to note that we didn't have
Tropical
a landfalling.
storm.
Yes, we didn't have a landfalling hurricane this season, but we did have landfalling tropical storms. Chantal being one of them, which made
Chantal.
landfall kind of near Myrtle Beach.
And so, I don't remember. Do you remember what month that was? I can't remember that off the top
Oh,
of my
geez,
head.
was June, July?
It was early season.
It was
Yeah.
early season, June or July-ish.
Did we have a June one this year?
I can't remember.
Maybe we didn't.
I think it was
This
July.
was
maybe
obviously
early
not
July.
a memorable storm.
Right.
No,
That's
no.
the thing.
We,
remember
we,
it.
we had a few rain showers and that was it. I remember, and even the surf for our area, because you know me, I'm always looking at that. We didn't have really much of a swell from it either.
No.
So that wasn't a big time. We just had a few showers. No different than if we just had any normal day of showers, really.
I remember that there was some uncertainty as to whether it would arrive farther southward along the coastline of South Carolina.
I remember Charleston was kind of, are we going to get it? Savannah was maybe like, maybe for us. There was some heavy rain in the central parts of North Carolina, though. They had some problems with flooding from that one as the storm kind of rained itself out over land. But it was pretty much moisture starved as it kind of continued north and then northeast into our area. So that long one there that just popped up first, that's Aaron.
So that was Aaron.
Aaron was kind of the start of the major hurricane train. Started out near the Cabo Verde Islands and then did that whole just kind of C-shaped track off of the East Coast. And that was one of the longer lasting storms of the season.
I would say Aaron, probably I don't know if I want to use the word hyped, but hyped storm the season.
It was
for the United States.
That one had, social media was buzzing with Aaron. I remember even a week out from the storm, even becoming a tropical storm or hurricane, this one was going crazy on social media. It did end up becoming a really strong hurricane, rapidly intensified. But it did stay off of our coastline, which is really fortunate. Again, we got indirect impacts in our area, the elevated surf, the kind of beach erosion from the elevated surf.
Outer Banks problems.
I would say that storm kind of kicked off our problems on the Outer Banks when it came to the erosion in the homes.
I was thinking about Buxton, too. It used to be that there were certain areas that you knew they were going to get these homes knocked off.
Yeah, you were just waiting for it.
South Nags Head especially was one area because in the 1960s, a lot of these places had bulldozed the dunes.
So they could have got a nice beach view.
Yeah, you got a nice beach view, and then you can walk right out of the the
if you want, you can have a nice beach view, but you're sacrificing the safety of your development
And
but
insurance.
They didn't know that at the time. So you kind of go, a place in it'd be one or two places a year would get knocked off into the ocean, and you'd think, it's South Nags Head. It's supposed to happen. They've been condemned for years or condemned for some time because their plumbing systems were gone. The septic tanks.
Once the septic tanks is compromised, the house is condemned.
So the house is condemned. They're sitting there waiting to fall into the ocean. But then this is stuff at Buxton has just been wildly surprising.
And very quickly.
Over a couple of week period, we've seen multiple homes.
Yeah, by the end of the summer, nothing was surprising as far as happening at Buxton.
Right.
But it really was a surprise to see that 15 or so homes got knocked out.
One thing that's always kind of surprised me too is that establishing a dune is very difficult. It's not just building a hill, throwing some seed on it, and then plants are going to grow. They are something that take a long time to form.
Very long time.
Yeah.
And they try to put Christmas trees in them to build them up because it kind of holds it together. It doesn't work like that, though.
Sometimes doing it man-made is just not the way to do it. And Mother Nature, we know a lot more now about how kind of barrier island systems work. It's essentially just a giant exposed sandbar, and they are constantly shifting, not just with certain swells that come through and shift the sand around. Wind. Sand gets blown around over time in the wind. So these land features are always changing.
There's the Pea Island wildlife refuge.
Yes.
What is Pea Island? What is Pea Island? It's not an island. Well, it used to be.
It used to be.
Yes.
It used to be a small, short island as you came across the bridge, and boom, there it was.
Yeah.
But it was well before any of our times. It was, I believe, in the 1800s that it got closed up.
Oh, okay. That's when it started to close up.
We've
Looking
got
back
a few
at the
stats.
yeah.
You notice you notice Melissa there in the Caribbean. That was the only one down there this whole season. The Gulf very, very abnormally, not very active this season. Here's Melissa on satellite. This was our strongest storm of the year. I think peak sustained winds 185 miles per hour right up until landfall. Just a textbook looking Category 5 storm. Was a beast of a system, and a storm that made landfall on the south side of Jamaica. Some of the most breathtaking images you'll ever see from the stadium effect inside the eye of
And they
Melissa
had
too.
to recall this plane. The
Yeah,
plane.
Yes.
a couple of it was too strong to be going through there. Which, of course, the hurricane hunters are just some of the bravest people on earth in general for being able to go through these storms. But
But there's a limit for the
there
aircraft.
is a limit,
Yeah.
and this
Yep.
storm pushed that limit.
Yep. They probably were still fine, but they were getting thrown around hard.
Thrown around, yeah.
Because they wear, full harnesses. It's not just a seatbelt.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
full harness, and they're along for the ride. And
yeah.
if the aircraft is going to have issues,
It's
you
this
need to bring
one.
the aircraft back home.
Oh yeah, and if there was a storm where it was going to happen, it was going to be Melissa.
Yep. That's an incredible view there. Let's end with the stats of this hurricane season for 2025.
Yeah,
So
Melissa the
185.
strongest, 185 gusts over 200 miles per hour. I think we're still kind of figuring out the data from this storm as time goes on. Final stats: 13 total storms, 5 hurricanes, 4 of those being major hurricanes. And again, no U.S. landfalls. First time that's happened since 2015 that a hurricane did not make landfall on U.S. soil.
Storms can still pop up in December and January. Do you think that's going to happen this
No.
year?
I don't think this season, but I mean, strong nor'easters, we got to watch for that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will watch for nor'easters between now and March.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, definitely.
And we can still see impacts here. The beach erosion can still continue any time of the year. So we're going to be watching the Outer Banks and our coastal areas.
All right. Well, thanks for watching this special edition episode of Beyond the
Bye.
Forecast. We'll see you next time.